I'm Abby, I have a lot of records, and this is Vinyl Monday. So welcome back, or welcome if this is your first time here. Vinyl Monday is the who, what, when, where, why, and how do I feel about classic albums in my collection. If TV show length episodes aren't your thing, don't worry. I also do Vinyl Monday in 60 seconds, here on my channel, over on my Instagram, as well as TikTok. Alright, we've seen the look. Suede jacket, paisley, overgrown bangs, little tiny rectangle sunglasses. We got the whole picture here. Alright, sunglasses coming off. I really wish I could film with sunglasses. It would make this situation so much easier some days. But as long as I need like 6 lights, not happening. In the outro of the season premiere, I let it slip that at a certain point this season, we would start seeing the 60th anniversaries of foundational psychedelic rock albums. This week's album arguably produced the first psychedelic rock song, but I couldn't wait the 9 months to feature it, so here we are now. What a treat it is to go from one of my favorite albums of the 1970s last week to one of my favorite albums of the 1960s this week. This week's album is the Byrds' Fifth Dimension. Congrats to those who guessed this one. Remember, if you want to play along, all you gotta do is check out my post tab. That's where I post the hints to what the next album is gonna be. I make announcements, I host polls, you can find all of that on my channel. And if you so choose, you can always read the written versions of my reviews on my website, linked in the description. Alright, let's take the plastic off. So my copy is an original in stereo. If my Discogs is correct, this would have been the first Byrds album that I bought. I still have the plastic sleeve that Newbury Comics put it in, so I know I got it there, but I can't remember when I got this. The Fifth Dimension cover art was photographed by the Horn and Griner studio in New York. The guys are posed in a black void, seated on what appears to be a magic carpet. It seems we've intruded on the Byrds' little tea party as McGuinn, Crosby, and I think that's Michael Clark standing up, all have little teacups, and and Chris Hillman is having a smoke. Roger has ditched his famous McGuinn sunglasses for Bob Dylan Wayfarers, and Cross is rocking his Oscar Wilde, Frank Lloyd Wright-ish green suede cape. This is also the first appearance of the second Byrds logo, a hand-drawn psychedelic paisley tile motif. As you can see, there are only 4 birds in this photo. In interview talking about the Byrds photo book, Chris Hillman said this photo shoot was part of one fateful trip to New York, immediately after Gene Clark's departure. We will talk more about this later. On the back cover, we just have some black and white portraits of the guys. Not sure whose teddy bear this is, but cute. And our track listing in the correct order on the bottom. Very 60s thing to do. On Fifth Dimension, we have the second lineup of the Byrds. We do have Gene Clark on harmony vocals, tambourine, and harmonica on Captain Soul, but our core lineup consists of Roger McGuinn. Okay, so his name technically wasn't Roger McGuinn yet. He's still going by Jim, but since there are at least 2 other Jims in this story, and to kind of just keep things consistent across my other Byrds videos, he's just gonna be Roger McGuinn for now. Roger plays lead guitar, sings lead on the title track, I Come and Stand at Every Door, and John Riley, and sings co-lead on I See You with David Crosby. He plays guitar, harmony vocals, and sings lead on What's Happening and Hey Joe. Chris Hillman plays bass, sings harmony vocals, and sings lead on Mr. Spaceman. And Michael Clark, no relation to Gene, plays drums. Our special guests include Van Dyke Parks playing organ on the title track, Alan Stanton providing string arrangements for Wild Mountain Time, and John Lear, heir to the Learjet fortune, performing spoken word on 242 Foxtrot, aka the Learjet song. Fifth Dimension was produced by Alan Stanton. Roll transition. Before starting this chapter, I have 2 notes to make. Number 1, for most any pre-Graham Parsons Byrds episode, Johnny Rogan's Timeless Flight is a crucial resource. Unfortunately, it's been out of print for years, copies are very few and far between, another printing is looking unlikely as Johnny has passed, and somehow no one's uploaded any of the 3 editions of it to the Internet Archive. The only access I had to anything from this text was through Andrew Hickey's History of Rock Music in 500 Songs podcast episode about 8 Miles High. The episode is in my works cited list, as is everything else I use for all my episodes. I always post those in the written versions of my reviews. Thank you, Andrew Hickey, for making this source accessible to all of us. And I am so annoyed by this book not being on the archive that with my next paycheck, I am buying a scanner, I am buying a copy of this book, and if nobody else is gonna put it on the archive, I'll upload it my damn self. Guys, nothing grinds my gears like inaccessible sources. Everyone knows where the exits are, everyone knows how seatbelts work, trays up, down like this, we're fine. Okay, back to our regular programming.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Byrds.
The Byrds slogan really should have been First in Flight. They were the first band to move to Laurel Canyon, triggering 2 whole waves of musicians doing so. They'd only been together a few months when they had their first #1 hit, Mr. Tambourine Man, and within a year and a half, they graduated from glorified Bob Dylan cover band to kings of the Sunset Strip and accidental inventors of an entire subgenre the first time. Biographer John Anerson said, quote, "While they may have appeared on our television sets as cool, calm, collected, the 5 members of the Byrds were, in reality, still mere boys coming to terms with a level of success, adulation, adoration, and reward none of them could ever have envisioned even 6 months earlier." In August of 1965, the Byrds take flight, get ready for a lot of bird puns, for their first UK tour. It should have been a slam dunk. That week, Mr. Tambourine Man was #1, the Beatles' Help was #2, and the Rolling Stones' Satisfaction was #3. Instead, it was a grueling 3 weeks. New Ministry of Labor regulations across the pond threatened to derail the whole thing. For every US group that wanted to tour the UK, a UK group had to come and tour the US. There was a period there where the Byrds couldn't find anyone to exchange with, but the Dave Clark 5 stepped in at the last minute. As soon as the Byrds touched down at Heathrow, they were served a lawsuit from the Byrds? Yeah, so there was another group from England, also called the Byrds. Nothing really remarkable about them besides their guitarist, Ronnie Wood. The suit didn't move forward, obviously, but it still left a bad taste in our Byrds' mouths. The guys were booked at venues, Roger, Chris, and Mike all got sick, and they got poor reviews. The NME wrote, "Stage presence is non-existent, and so is any communication with the audience. The audience don't like it. Neither do I." Looking back on the situation, Chris said we should have waited to go to England. But Derek Taylor convinced us to go, partly because he could triumphantly march back to London and show Brian Epstein his band. The trip wasn't a complete bust. The flight home gave Gene inspiration for one very important lyric. One can imagine the pilot coming over the intercom doing the whole, "Ladies and gentlemen, we are now flying at 37,000 feet. The light will come on when..." blah blah blah. 37,000 feet is about 7 miles. In no time at all, Gene had the basic chord progression and the lyrics. Cross filled in the blanks like the line "Rain Grey Town," known for its sound, and Roger arranged the piece. He also suggested that 7 miles high be changed to 8 miles high. 8 Miles High just has a better ring to it. Just as the Byrds got back from their trip to England, who touches down in LA but the Beatles? George and Paul dropped by sessions for the Byrds the times they are a-changin', and Cross ran off to hang out with them. Before going any further, I'd be remiss not to mention that my friend Nancy over at Vinyl Friday did her own episode on Fifth Dimension. There, she fabulously lays out the Beatles, Byrds, Dylan pyramid. She did it on a whiteboard. It's nice and easy for oafs like us to understand. All these acts influenced each other. Without the Beatles, you don't get the Byrds at all. They were touted as the American answer to the British invasion. Without Dylan, you sure as hell don't get the Byrds. Without the Byrds and Dylan, you don't get Rubber Soul. Without John and George playing hooky on their second date of their US tour to go drop acid with Roger and Cross, Rubber Soul might have sounded a little different. And you certainly don't get the Byrds Mach 2 without the Beatles. This relationship proves very important to their artistic development. 2 months after meeting the Fab Four, the Byrds released their cover of Pete Seeger's Turn, Turn, Turn. It was a massive success. It went #1 in December, charted a whole week longer than Mr. Tambourine Man did. 2 days later, the Turn, Turn, Turn LP was released, and with their new hit single, they appeared on lots of TV spots, including the final episode of Hollywood A Go-Go. But it wasn't all sunshine and roses. Recording Turn, Turn, Turn sowed dissent within the Byrds. There was a schism between Roger, who sided with producer Terry Melker, and Cross, who wanted manager Jim Dixon to be their producer, as he felt Terry passed up all his songs for Gene's. Gene, Chris, and Mike were all neutral parties, but tended to side with Roger because Cross was, well, Cross. But he got his way. Partway through their next tour, Terry got the boot. Dixon was not installed as producer, as it was Columbia rules to have somebody within the Columbia umbrella producing the records. They instead installed Alan Stanton. Off the back of Turn, 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 the Byrds embark on Dick Clark's Caravan of Stars tour with Bo Diddley and Paul Revere and the Raiders. The guys rode in style in their own Winnebago. It had comfort, it had privacy, both important things when you're smoked out of your gourds all the time. Most importantly, the Winnebago had a tape player. David made a tape to play while he drove, including recordings by sitar guru Ravi Shankar. Dixon first played Ravi for Roger back in 1964. Jim then invited Cross to a Ravi session in '65, and he was instantly obsessed. Who did he get obsessed? George Harrison. At the same time, he'd become fascinated by the sitar on the set of Help. This new thing called Raga Rock was germinating. The Kinks played around with it on See My Friends, the Yardbirds dipped their toe in on Heartful of Soul. Ravi inspired Cross to write B-side Why. Also on that tape were John Coltrane's Impressions and Africa Brass. Cross bumped into the man himself in a bathroom once while way too high.
I got my head against this puke green tile. I can still remember the color of the tile. Bam! Somebody kicks the door open. Bam! It's Train.
Best scene in David Crosby Remember My Name. The idea that 8 Miles High was the Byrds' first jazz excursion is inaccurate. The airport song does a bossa nova thing, which was all the rage in '64, but this would be the most overt reference to the genre they ever made. The Zombies' She's Not There showed them it was possible. Another key ingredient to the Byrds' music at this time: LSD. It was first put on the pop culture map in the mid-60s thanks to Ken Kesey, his band of merry pranksters, and one very special trip to the 1964 World's Fair on a bus called Further. We could go on a whole tangent about MK Ultra, the acid test, the Dead, and God knows what else. We can't forget Timothy Leary either, but since I am not Andrew Hickey, we will not be doing that. From the mid-60s onwards, especially after LSD was outlawed in the States in 1966, music just exploded with this stuff. The Beatles, the Stones, the Beach Boys, hell, Dylan very likely referenced a trip he went on in New Orleans in Mr. Tambourine Man, the song that made the Byrds famous. David said, quote, "I remember Roger and I doing it and walking around Hollywood, wandering down Sunset Boulevard and winding up on the roof of a building that we had no right being on, going into Will Wright's ice cream store and frightening the people in there with the intensity we were projecting. We didn't do it very often, but we did do it." About the influence of LSD on pop culture, John Savage said, quote, "It wasn't like pot or pills. It was fundamental." Considering the effects of the drug, which I have absolutely no personal experience with, I don't know what you're talking about, it's easy how one would gravitate towards the improvisational, simultaneous nature of jazz, where jazz has the ostinato, Indian classical music has the drone. Both invoke a hypnotic state where all sense of time falls apart, apparently, like the drug, ergo, both were, quote, "the period's secret soundtrack." The result of all of this, 8 Miles High, was first recorded just weeks after the guys completed the Turn 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 LP. They recorded this version at RCA Studios, but Columbia rejected it on the grounds of it not being recorded at their facility. So all the guys hauled back out to cut it at Columbia. Looking back, this was probably the best time in the Byrds' career. Minimal strife, they had a hit, they were getting gigs, and they were bona fide trendsetters. What could possibly go wrong? The trouble began with an unfortunate clash between the guys and the crew on the Ed Sullivan Show. A producer asked them to play a shortened version of Turn Turn Turn. David Crosby was... well, David Crosby about it. He mouthed off to some producer who happened to be Ed Sullivan's son-in-law. Jim tried to massage the situation, but the damage was done. The Byrds were blacklisted from the biggest stage on television. We were all young guys, basically kids, who didn't know how to handle ourselves, and interpersonal dysfunction would increasingly become part of life as a Byrd. Gene Clark was especially sensitive to this. He had a lot going on behind the scenes that the rest of the guys were oblivious to. They were young men in a time where young men didn't talk about their feelings, let alone their mental health. Being the principal songwriter weighed heavy on Gene. It didn't feel good to be stuck in the middle of Roger and Cross, and he was uncomfortable being the guy who made the most off songwriting royalties. Gene said, quote, "I was 19. Then here you are in limousines in London, England, hanging out with and meeting John Lennon. Then flying back to California and hanging out in Beverly Hills with the Beatles again, exchanging thoughts and ideas. Nobody was prepared for that kind of dimension. We dreamed about it and thought it would be a lot of fun, but then all at once it became a reality. The shock of being put in that position, I'll be real honest about it, I couldn't handle it." In February of 1966, as the Byrds were about to fly out to New York to play a gig for Murray the K, Gene freaked the fuck out. He'd flown before. He wrote 8 Miles High on a plane, so the rest of the guys were really confused as to why he was freaking out. Roger tried to calm him down, but it was no use. It was a bizarre moment, Chris remembered. There were no warning signs that he might have a nervous breakdown. In fact, it was so unusual that the rest of us were a little spooked. Roger issued an ultimatum. You can't be a bird if you can't fly. In getting off that flight, Gene ended his flight with the Byrds, blaming a fear of flying. When they came back from New York, Chris begged Gene to reconsider, but he'd made up his mind. This wasn't the first time he got spooked on a plane and left a band. This is how he exited the New Christie Minstrels. I think he just couldn't handle Hollywood. He was a gentle soul. Of all the people who should have gone back to Kansas, gotten married, and had a normal life, it was Gene. Because he left the band, Gene only appears on 8 Miles High, its B-side Y, and Captain Soul on this album. In the meantime, the guys have to adjust to a Byrds sans Gene. The working title was 8 Miles High, and there were supposed to be some Dylan covers on this album, but the band forego this in hopes of forming their own identity, out from under Bob's shadow. With their principal songwriter gone, Roger and Cross had to step up to the plate, and of course, they squabbled over who got how many songs on an album. Roger brings Wild Mountain Time, a folk tune he got hip to by way of Pete Seeger, and John Riley by way of Joan Baez. He also brought in a poem by Nazim Hikmet about the bombing of Hiroshima, which became I Come and Stand at Every Door, and Cross reintroduces Hey Joe. He'd been trying to get the band to record it since he joined. He was convinced he had discovered it himself and convinced it would be a hit. The track listing of Fifth Dimension goes as follows. Opening up side one, we have the title track, Fifth Dimension, followed by Wild Mountain Time, then Mr. Spaceman, next I See You, What's Happening, and side one closes with I Come and Stand at Every Door. Opening up side two, we have 8 Miles High, followed by Hey Joe, with the subtitle Where You Gonna Go, next Captain Soul, then John Riley, and the album closes with 242 Foxtrot, aka the Learjet song. Fifth Dimension was released in July of 1966. 8 Miles High was the single back in March, not Hey Joe as Cross had hoped. It was picked as a Cashbox Single of the Week along with the Beach Boys' Sloop John B. by virtue of when it was released. 8 Miles High was the starting gun of this newfangled thing that would come to be known as psychedelic rock. At least it was on this side of the pond. The Yardbirds released Shapes of Things back in February. Nonetheless, this is one small step for Bird, one giant leap for Birdkind. Richie Unterberger observed they, quote, were so far ahead of the curve that they were playing music that had yet to be named. It did well, peaking at number 14 the week of May 21st, but they ran into trouble. At a press conference in New York in March, Cross started running his mouth about drugs. That's not suspicious at all! From there, he just kinda kept doing it, which made Gavin's record report take a closer look at 8 Miles High. Chris said, quote, I guess somebody at the record report did the math and figured we couldn't be talking about an airplane because planes don't fly that high, so we must have been talking about some other kind of high. Oh no! 5 guys with bowl cuts corrupting the youths! Roger complained. We could have called the song 42,240 Feet, but somehow this didn't seem to be a very commercial title. It's like the Doors getting in trouble with the Ed Sullivan Show for the line Girl, we couldn't get much higher. Since the Byrds didn't have Jimbo's frankly ridiculous plot armor, the Gavin report recommended 8 Miles High be pulled from the air. Along with Bob Dylan's Rainy Day Women, it was one of the first songs to be deemed a drug song and banned. Derek Taylor put out a press release in disc in the Byrds' defense, but the damage was done. Do I believe that the Gavin report was the reason 8 Miles High didn't chart higher? No. This thing was never going to be a number one. It was too far ahead of the curve. It underperformed in LA and Chicago surveys, which Mark Teahan reports in his paper dispelling this myth. And the So You Want to Be a Rock and Roll Singer book details several instances of the guys excitedly bringing 8 Miles High to DJs only to get lukewarm to incredulous responses. Do I believe this controversy put DJs off from spinning future Byrds singles for fear of potential repercussions? Yes. Do I believe the Byrds were already on their way out as their sound had been completely commodified by groups like the Monkees? Absolutely. 8 Miles High was the Byrds' last single to break the top 20, and the album couldn't crack the top 20 in the US or the UK. In October, the Byrds were the first rock and roll group to play the Village Gate. This was a New York jazz club that once hosted Dizzy Gillespie, Art Blakey, and Muddy Waters. This was a year and a half before the Byrds were the first rock and roll group to play the Opry. Back in LA, Chris and Cross were invited to play with Letta Mbulu, a South African singer under the tutelage of friend of the band Hugh Masekela. The session went so well, it gave Chris the confidence to write his first original song, Time Between. After the title track And I See You didn't fare as well as 8 Miles High did, the guys took stock and realized they didn't have any more potential singles on the album. They had to write another album. Time Between appears on that album, Younger Than Yesterday. The Byrds also asked themselves, do we even want to be a singles band anymore? In June, Dylan put out rock and roll's first double album, Blonde on Blonde, the month before the Beach Boys released arguably the first concept album, Pet Sounds, and the Beatles put out Revolver and quit touring that fall. 1966 was the year of major acts steering away from singles chasing and moving in pursuit of the album. Chris himself doesn't think much of being a psych rock pioneer, considering 8 Miles High more of a jazz arrangement than anything. But it's still one of his favorite songs the Byrds ever did. As for Hey Joe, the Leaves had a hit with it, Love recorded it, then Jimi Hendrix came along. Hey Joe. As you can imagine, Cross was saying "I told you so" up, down, and all over. So, what do I think of Fifth Dimension? The Byrds are one of the most important and influential bands to come out of the United States, along with the Beach Boys, the Dead, the Velvet Underground, and Sonic Youth. The Byrds went through 3 distinct periods: folk rock, psychedelic rock, and country rock. To pioneer 3 such massive genres in 4 years is unheard of. The only other band I can think of that changed that much and were such innovators in each field are the Beatles. They went from I Wanna Hold Your Hand to Strawberry Fields Forever to f***ing Rev 9 in about the same amount of time. If you'll remember, I nearly covered Fifth Dimension this time last year, but axed it in favor of Van Morrison's Astral Weeks. I got hung up on Fifth Dimension's piecemeal nature. I couldn't get past how obviously uneven it is. But as you could probably tell, this doesn't bother me anymore. This album's opener and title track, Fifth Dimension, was written by Roger. He said this was about Einstein's theory of relativity, but this song is absolutely about drugs. Lines like, "All my two-dimensional boundaries are gone, I had lost them badly, I saw that world crumble and thought I was dead, and I opened my heart to the whole universe and I found it was loving," are pretty telling of the psychedelic experience. Alice in Wonderland was a popular reference in the 60s for obvious reasons, see White Rabbit. Roger seems to do it too, and as I continued to drop through the hole, I found all surrounding. The fall down the rabbit hole is pretty scary, but Roger finds himself in a peaceful, welcoming place to show me that joy innocently is just be quiet and feel it around you. It's the sensory exaltation of, you guessed it, psychedelic drugs. Man, the Gavin report was barking up the wrong tree. As Roger was the folky of the guys, this track is structured like a folk song, though the subject matter is difficult to catch in your fingers, and we technically start at the end of the narrative. Oh, how is it that I could come out to here and be still floating? He still tells a story like a folk song. The lyric even references this scrambling of the timeline. I will remember the place that is now, that has ended before the beginning. Moments of vocal euphoria are nestled in this cozy waltz time. See the 2-part cry of... My favorite vocal harmony the Byrds ever did is on this song. It's a repeat of the first verse with Master of Harmony Crosby singing over top of it. It really makes you feel like you're levitating or riding the guy's magic carpet on the cover. And of course, Van Dyke Parks' organ makes that atmosphere as well. With a slugger of a side one like Fifth Dimension has, Wild Mountain Time is the weak spot. It's got the signature jangly Rickenbacker, it's got the harmonies, but this song on a body of work like this feels like a regression. This is another tip of the hat to Pete Seeger, but this Scottish verse as an Irish folk song just doesn't mesh with the distinctly California Fifth Dimension. The string arrangement means well, but it's too heavy-handed and sweet. I do like the humming, though. People don't hum enough on their records these days. We used to be a proper country. On Mr. Spaceman, country boy Chris sings about being visited on the farm by a UFO. If I had a nickel for every song about aliens in a Vinyl Monday, I'd have 2 nickels and wait! I haven't featured CCR in how long? This is one of several instances Chris had the Byrds dipping their toes in country pre-Sweetheart of the Rodeo. Musically, this is tight and catchy, just over 2 minutes long, it wastes no time, the walking bass line is fun, the descending turnaround is fun, the feeling is bouncy and lighthearted. I See You is a joint Crosby-McGuinn number that lifts its groove right from the English beat groups. This was most certainly inspired by the Byrds tour. We get a taste of Roger's new Coltrane-inspired soloing style, with smaller doses injecting the song with flavor as opposed to two pillars setting the tone. The syncopation, front-loaded riff, and what sounds like woodblock percussion infuse kind of a Latin feel. We know the jazz stylings of Spain and South America respectively were on people's brains in the 60s. This isn't the strongest songwriting, it's very abstract means of telling a lady you've met her before, somewhere in the cosmos. A very 60s way of getting in a girl's pants, but the lyric is more a means to deliver an interesting vocal performance. The light influence of modal jazz can be felt in the melody and harmony, and Roger sounds like he's imitating Cross on his vocal. What's happening is Crosby's first solo songwriting credit as a Byrd. He's saying he doesn't know anything about anything. I don't have the vaguest notion whose it is or what it's all for. But this not knowing doesn't distress him. He surrenders himself to the not knowing, for that's how you learn the lessons the universe has to teach you. Man. What's Happening's excellence is the music, and the Byrds knew it too. There's a whole instrumental round of the verse after David's vocal is complete. Everyone teams up to build this raga-rock tone, the droning rhythm guitar and bass underneath Roger playing long bent notes. Pay attention to how, when Mike switches from the shuffle to the drive in the half-tempo section, he plays slightly behind the beat as Roger does. It gives a stoned and hazy feel with a sweet scent, like incense. The side one closer, I Come and Stand at Every Door, is the Byrds' most sobering song. With the zombie's butcher's tale, this is one of the most graphic anti-war songs I've ever covered on this channel, and with Machine Gun, it's one of the most harrowing anti-war songs. The poem is from the point of view of a child killed in the bombing of Hiroshima. The poem was adapted to the melody of Great Selkie of Shulskari, which Judy Collins recorded.
In Norway there sits a maid. I come and stand at every door.
The constant looming threat of nuclear warfare comes up a lot in songs of the 60s. See, A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall. There are so many anti-war songs out of that decade too. Rarely do we hear the consequences of nuclear warfare in song. My friend Nancy identified another song from this angle, Simon and Garfunkel's The Sun is Burning, in her Fifth Dimension episode. There's no introduction to cushion us, just a chiming chord before the line, I come and stand at every door, but no one hears my silent tread. I knock and yet remain unseen, for I am dead, for I am dead. There's no breaks in the music either. It's one long drone, which Roger sings over, unflinching in the narrator's description of their fate. My hair was scorched by swirling flame. My eyes grew dim. My eyes grew blind. Death came and turned my bones to dust, and that was scattered by the wind. I Come and Stand at Every Door is a chilling reminder of a consequence of war a lot of us grown-ups forget. Childhood is a casualty of war, just as human life is. The casualty that stands at the door of every war. I need no fruit, I need no rice, I need no sweets or even bread. All this child asks for is for peace, so no more children have to meet this fate. No matter what race, religion, geographic location, or creed, they deserve a peaceful and happy journey to adulthood. When children die, they do not grow. After flipping the record, we drop the needle on Chris Hillman's instantly recognizable bass, so muscular it rattles Mike's kick drum. The pulsing guitar builds tension until Roger unleashes into his yarn ball solo. The opening motif directly references Coltrane's India. John Anerson said, quote, "Nothing in their previous body of work even hinted at the oral assault of 8 Miles High. None of these songs even hint to it. We've gotten 3 standard issue Byrds songs, 1 flirting with country, a slight jazz flavor, and a harrowing side 1 closer. This combines the raga drone with free jazz harmonics and rock and roll energy." About the lyric, John Savage said, quote, "Skilled communicators, the group knew that an overt LSD lyric would cause trouble, so they cloaked their visions within an account of their August 1965 trip to London." Roger admitted the word high was a double meaning, and we all knew it. Everyone at that time had experimented with drugs, and there was a tongue-in-cheek thought. But it wasn't the main thrust of the song. Chris maintains the song is dead-ass just about a trip to London. That's the story the vast majority of the imagery revolves around, from touching down at Heathrow. 8 miles high, and when you touch down, you'll find that it's stranger than known. Gene transports you, the stranger, from sunny California to this strange world, a busy sidewalk corner on a rainy London day. Rain-gray town known for its sound. London is known for being rainy and known for rock and roll. In places, small faces unbound. Big black limousines drive by. Squares travel in packs, presumably huddled under their umbrellas. The headlights bleed into the foggy air, and slick wet street. Everything bleeds together like a watercolor. Or the psychedelic experience. The openness of the beautiful 3-part vocal harmony emphasizes that blurry feel, as does the frankly crunchy recording fidelity of this whole album. And I can't let the reference to the Byrds lawsuit pass us by. Nowhere is there warmth to be found among those afraid of losing their ground. To recap, lyrics of 8 Miles High? Kind of drugs. The music of 8 Miles High? Absolutely drugs. This was the best drumming Mike ever did on a Byrds record. It's clear he was paying attention to what Coltrane's drummer Elvin Jones was doing. He uses the same low, rumbling rolls and crackling rim shots we hear on the acknowledgement of A Love Supreme. Crosby's propulsive rhythm work is the song's magic, especially through the white knuckle coda. The crescendo at the end is breathtaking. That convinced me 8 Miles High is a perfect 3 minutes of music. Hey Joe has the displeasure of following up 8 Miles High in the track listing, which really didn't help Crosby's case. Other LA groups left their mark on this tune before the Byrds got to recording it, but the cowbell is super fun, as is a garage rock turn on this LP. Captain Soul evolved from a jam on Get Out My Life Woman. It's a bluesy, fine instrumental. There's a harmonica solo. This is a club-oriented number for sure. John Riley is another folk tune, true to the Byrds' roots, but ill-suited for this Byrds, if that makes any sense. Around here and Captain Soul, I start to question whether this really was the best sequencing and track listing for Fifth Dimension. This is such a front-loaded album, and having heard Psychodrama City and Why, they're far better suited to Fifth Dimension than Wild Mountain Time and this. Why especially, Roger's solos are fabulous. The album closes with 242 Foxtrot, Learjet song. 242 was the number of John Lear's personal jet, which he flew the Byrds to a gig on and did a roll with. Cros was napping when they did it. He woke up in the middle of the roll and flipped his thinking they were falling out of the sky. Thank God Gene wasn't on board. He would have had a heart attack. Roger wanted to use Foxtrot to incorporate sound effects. This predated Yellow Submarine by 2 whole months. Otherwise, it's a fine, fitting closer. Fifth Dimension is probably the Byrds' strongest album statement. It's got both musical chops and variety. It's also a flawed body of work. This is the result of the flight of Gene Clark. The Byrds never could quite center themselves again after Gene left, and it's not lost on me that the best song on this album is the one he primarily authored. David said, "What the Byrds lost when Gene left was soul." honesty, a certain wonderful creative streak that was completely different. Gene was an absolute one-off. Nobody else wrote like that. Nobody else wrote those songs. There was simplicity, a naivete to those songs that the rest of us couldn't create. The Byrds were done when Gene left. We were never the same after that. After this album, the guys began to turn on each other, first firing Cross, then Chris ran off with Graham Parsons. Chris said the Byrds, quote, were lazy and cocky and it got to us. The curse of being called the next Beatles surely didn't help either. I'd say this album is also inconsistent because of how fast pop music was moving in 1966. Think about it. We had Good Lovin' in January, Shapes of Things in February, Paperback Writer and Rainy Day Women in the spring, 8 Miles High in April, Paint It Black in May, Tomorrow Never Knows that summer, and Good Vibrations in the fall. My God, I'm gonna have my work cut out for me in 2026. Fifth Dimension lacks the cohesion of the first two Byrds albums, sure, but it shows a drive to expand and experiment. It's difficult to understate this album's importance. It was the starting gun of psychedelic rock for so many more reasons than 8 Miles High. Though their peers would very soon eclipse them, the Byrds' willingness to expand and explore on Fifth Dimension authored how quite literally the rest of the decade would go. My personal favorites off this one are the title track, Mr. Spaceman, I See You, What's Happening, 8 Miles High, and Hey Joe. Remember, if you want to keep up with all of my favorites from all of the Vinyl Mondays, I have a Spotify playlist linked in my description. I update it every week. And that's it! That is Fifth Dimension. What do you think of this album? What do you think of the Byrds? Leave a comment letting me know. I love hearing what you guys have to say about albums that I love. And remember, despite what some guy on the internet says, your opinion matters. If you like what I do here, you should like this video and subscribe to my channel. I post new episodes of Vinyl Monday mornings at 11. I can't reach my glasses. They're stuck on things. Oh, what does it matter? I've already bungled the outro anyways. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!